The bug by Zhou Dedong Fu Ding Fan was drifting alone in Beijing, working as an editor at a fashion magazine. He was single and lived by himself in a residential complex on the outskirts of the city. Every day when he got off work and went home, he felt that something vital was missing from the empty room. Once on an outing in the countryside with his coworkers, he bought 2 baby chicks from a farmer. When he got home, he put the chicks out on the balcony. They immediately started chirping non-stop, and his life became a little livelier. Ding Fan always fed them millet and occasionally gave them water. One of the chicks grew weaker and weaker, and after a week it died. Ding Fan was a very kind man. Watching that little chick lie limp on the cold floor, twitch once and close its eyes forever, he felt miserable for a long time. Later, he thought that chicks cannot live on grain alone and should be taken to a lawn to eat some bugs. So on the weekend he took the chick out to eat bugs. Other people walked dogs, only he walked a chick. It followed close behind him. Wherever Ding Fan went, it went. Because it was so fragile, a single careless foot could have taken its life, so it was terrified of everything. That day, the chick ate a great many tiny green caterpillars and similar insects. It showed surprising ferocity toward them. It pecked the bugs up one by one with its sharp little beak and swallowed them quickly, the motions nimble, precise and forceful. In only a few months the chick had grown up. That day, Ding Fan got off work and took the bus home. The stop where he got off was still half a station away from the gate of the complex, so he walked. It was already dusk. The concrete road lay flat and smooth, and the reddish light of the setting sun spread thickly over it. There was no one around except Ding Fan. On both sides of the road stood waist-high wild grass. The lawns inside the complex were of course different. Someone watered them, trimmed them, sprayed them with medicine, and they looked like thick green carpets. Suddenly Ding Fan stopped. He saw a bug leaving the patch of wild grass beside the road and slowly crawling across the clean pavement. It was the first time Ding Fan had seen a bug like that. Its entire body was grass green, and if it lurked in the grass, no one would have noticed it. It was about as big as a little finger, round and plump, with no bones at all. It had countless grass green feet, or rather, it looked as if dense hair grew beneath its body. All those hairs moved together, and it glided forward smoothly. Just looking at it made Ding Fan feel sick all over. He immediately thought he should catch it and take it home for the chick to eat its fill. So he took out his ID card, placed it in front of the bug, and then used the barrel of the ballpoint pen he had with him to push it onto the card. He lifted the card and quickly walked home. The bug lay quietly on the ID card, motionless. Its face was too small for Ding Fan to make out its forehead, eyes, nose, or mouth, and he could not even tell what expression it had. But he could clearly feel that it was staring at him coldly. As he neared the apartment door, the bug suddenly crawled to the edge of the ID card and stretched its body straight. Half of it hung in the air. Then the stiffened body turned sharply and fixed on Ding Fan. In that turn it brushed against his hand. Soft, plump, cool, fleshy, furry. Ding Fan shuddered and flung both the card and the bug from his hand at once. After falling to the ground, the bug began crawling toward the lawn. Ding Fan squatted down, picked it up again, and hurried into the apartment. Back home, he put the bug on the balcony floor and coaxed the chick to eat it. The chick came over and circled around it several times, seeming too afraid to peck. At last it tested the bug with its sharp beak, and the bug immediately curled tightly into a ball. The chick grew bolder. It grabbed the bug, shook it loose, grabbed it again, shook it loose again. After repeating this many times, it still had not broken the bug's skin. Ding Fan felt that even though the bug had curled up, its eyes hidden among countless legs were still staring coldly at him. At last the chick gave up. It let out a series of clucks and ran off. It ran to the corner of the balcony, turned back, and blinked at him. No matter how Ding Fan called it, it would not come back, as if it were terrified. Ding Fan was very discouraged. Next, he thought of throwing the bug out onto the lawn. But then he thought again. It would be too pointless to let such a disgusting thing live in the world. A violent urge rose in him. He ran into the kitchen, took out a sharp knife, came back to the bug, squatted down, gritted his teeth, and cut at it across the middle. But he did not cut it in two. The bug seemed to feel pain. It kept its round shape but suddenly rolled over a full 360 degrees. It did not cry out. In that roll, Ding Fan caught sight of its belly. In truth, he did not see its belly because beneath it were countless hair-like legs, too deep and too many to take in, all moving together. Ding Fan's heart turned cold. Though its body looked delicate, when he cut into it, it felt tough, almost like elastic rubber. He truly did not want to deal with it any longer, so he decided to flush it down the toilet. He pushed the bug, now curled into a ball, onto the ID card, took it to the bathroom, and tossed it into the bowl. The bug fell into the water and immediately straightened itself out, floating on the surface. Its dense legs paddled on the water, and its head stayed turned toward Ding Fan. Once again, he felt that it was staring at him. He did not want to look at it anymore. He pressed the flush handle, and the powerful rush of water roared down. In an instant, the bug was gone without a trace. The pipes were utterly dark, ironclad, twisting and turning without end, beyond all hope of return. At the very moment the bug was flushed away, Ding Fan felt that its eyes, one or several, were still looking at him with a chill, like the stare a condemned man gives the executioner as the blade comes down. Another man, the bug disappeared like that. Not long after, a man suddenly appeared in Ding Fan's life. Everyone called him Xiao Jia. He was a freelance photographer. Ding Fan was responsible for the classic home living section at the magazine. The articles needed high-quality images, so every time he went out to interview someone, he had to bring a photographer along. That was how he met Xiao Jia, through a painter friend. The painter friend was a woman, and a very romantic one. According to her, Xiao Jia was a photographic genius. The taciturn Xiao Jia never agreed to shoot for Ding Fan. He only said that if there was a chance, Ding Fan could go out with him and take a look. He stressed that if he did not feel anything, he would never shoot. Xiao Jia was in his 30s and not married. He was short and thin, with a pale face and sparse facial hair that he often did not bother to shave. The painter friend said Xiao Jia definitely had no interest in luxurious houses and furniture. He liked mostly natural still lifes, the profile of a tree, tall grass, dead branches and fallen leaves, harvested fields, and so on. Yet Ding Fan had never seen any of his work. He must have been one of those masters who never showed his hand. Xiao Jia really was reclusive. He spoke very little and often sat alone staring at one spot, as though he was always preoccupied with something. Once Ding Fan walked over to him and followed the fixed direction of his gaze. There was only a white wall there with not even a speck of dust on it. Maybe artists really were like that. One day Ding Fan had dinner with the painter friend and also invited Xiao Jia. Before they ate, Ding Fan started talking about the green bug. When he got to the part where it suddenly flipped through 360 degrees, the painter friend let out a scream in fright and kept saying, "Don't talk about it, don't talk about it, don't talk about it. I've been afraid of bugs since I was little. I'm definitely going to have nightmares tonight." Xiao Jia sat coldly on Ding Fan's other side, staring at the teacup in front of him as if he had not heard a word. All right, I won't talk about it," Ding Fan said with a smile. "That restaurant was doing terrible business, only the three of them were eating there. Even the lighting looked dispirited, a dim yellow gloom. While they were eating, a shrill chicken scream suddenly came from behind them. Xiao Jia seemed to be badly startled and gave a sudden shudder. The painter friend did not notice the detail, but Ding Fan saw it. He turned to look and saw a cook wearing a white cap walking inside, carrying a speckled chicken in his hand. Xiao Jia steadied himself and went on drinking tea. He did not drink a drop of liquor. His strange reaction made Ding Fan alert. In his mind he drew a dark question mark. Once, Ding Fan interviewed an American who had rented a Sihuan in Beijing. It blended Chinese and Western styles and was arranged with a very distinctive touch. This American was also a photographer and had once won the Pulitzer Prize. Ding Fan invited Xiao Jia when he went to interview him. Xiao Jia always slept during the day and never answered anyone's calls. He only got up to work in the evening. So by the time Ding Fan returned from the interview with him, it was already dark. Passing a stretch of grass, Ding Fan saw two people sitting alone in the distance. Under the dim moonlight, their black silhouettes looked furtive and suspicious. Xiao Jia stopped and stared at the grass in silence. Ding Fan said, "This scene reminds me of when I was little and played hide and seek with my friends on the meadow back in my hometown." Xiao Jia seemed to be listening. Suddenly, he cut Ding Fan off and said in a strange voice, "If I hid in the grass, could you find me?" The tone of his voice frightened Ding Fan. He turned and looked at him. The old military uniform Xiao Jia wore was exactly the color of the grass, and under the ambiguous moonlight his pale face had turned a greenish tint. He stared fixedly at Ding Fan, and in the moonlight his eyes were two black holes. Ding Fan shivered. All at once he felt that Xiao Jia's expression was strangely familiar. Surfacing after that, Ding Fan kept thinking of Xiao Jia's eyes in the moonlight. He suddenly felt that Xiao Jia was very much like the bug he had killed. He knew that was nonsense, but he still could not shake his fear of the photographer. Why did he only come out at night? Why did he like grass-green clothes so much? Why was his expression always so strange? A few evenings later, Ding Fan was home alone, opened his computer, and as usual went into his email inbox. He saw an email with no subject. When he opened it, he was shocked. It was a photo of Xiao Jia. Xiao Jia was sitting in a somewhat desolate autumn forest, looking over with narrowed eyes. The scene was shot on a large scale, and the person was shot very small. Xiao Jia was looking at Ding Fan from far away in the woods, looking at him quietly from inside the computer screen. The more Ding Fan thought about it, the stranger it felt. If Xiao Jia and Ding Fan had never met, if the two of them were of opposite sex, if Ding Fan needed Xiao Jia's photo for some reason, then Ding Fan would not have found it strange. But that was not the case. 2 days earlier, Ding Fan had met him in person, and Ding Fan was a grown man, and Xiao Jia was also a grown man besides. Ding Fan had never asked him for any photograph. Although they had only met twice, Ding Fan and Xiao Jia were not that close. Yet on this night, Xiao Jia had inexplicably sent him a photo. The more Ding Fan looked at the photo, the more frightened he became. At last he avoided Xiao Jia's staring eyes in the picture, tossed the email into the trash, and deleted it forever. That night, Ding Fan could not sleep. In the dark, Xiao Jia's fixed stare from the photo kept flashing before his eyes. Why had he sent the photo? Ding Fan felt it was a terrifying question. In the middle of the night, Ding Fan finally managed to fall asleep, but he soon woke again. He felt that something in the house was not right, and his back kept going cold. He turned on the light and looked around. Everything in the apartment seemed normal. Just as he was about to switch the light off, he suddenly felt as if there were a pair of eyes in the crack beneath the door. He looked more closely and saw a grass-green bug, the very kind he had killed before. Its furry legs slowly moved beneath its body, and its face was turned toward Ding Fan, staring straight at him. All the hair on Ding Fan's body stood on end. Was this the one that had been flushed down the toilet? Or another one? What was it here for? Revenge? Ding Fan got out of bed shivering, picked up a broom and tried to drive it away. But the moment he moved toward it, it slowly slipped through the crack in the door and vanished into the dark corridor. Ding Fan stood there blankly for a long time before going back to bed. He could not sleep again. He tossed and turned, thinking about this strange bug, his heart pounding hard and fast. The next morning and afternoon, Ding Fan called Xiao Jia twice, but no one answered. After dark, he called again. The phone rang for a long time before Xiao Jia finally picked up. Xiao Jia, did you send me an email last night? No. Xiao Jia sounded a little cold. Ding Fan froze. Then what happened? I received an email yesterday, and it was your photo. I never send photos to people. Maybe someone was playing a joke on me. Maybe. Ding Fan hung up, but the more he thought about it, the less it made sense. After that, whenever Ding Fan got home from work and reached the area outside the complex, he always walked in the middle of the concrete road. He kept glancing at the wild grass on both sides, certain that countless bugs like that were hiding in there, and a chill kept running through him. That night he turned on his computer and checked his email again. Another message with no subject had arrived. When he opened it, it was Xiao Jia's photo again. This time Xiao Jia had drawn closer. The entire picture was only his pale face, his sparse beard clearly visible. He was staring straight into Ding Fan's eyes, as close as could be. Ding Fan drew in a sharp breath and hurriedly deleted the photo. His mind was in turmoil again. After turning off the light, he still could not sleep. He kept thinking hard. What exactly was wrong with this strange man? It was not until after midnight that Ding Fan finally drifted into a drowsy sleep. Suddenly he felt something fleshy by his ear. He jolted awake, sat up hard, turned on the light, and nearly fainted from fright. Another grass-green bug had appeared. It had already crawled onto his bed and was drilling into his ear. Its furry legs had clearly already touched his flesh. At that moment, under the bright light, the bug's body was motionless. Only its furry legs were waving slowly in place. Its face was turned toward Ding Fan, as if staring at him straight on. This time he seemed to make out its strange alien eyes. His mind went blank. He stumbled backward in panic, finally hitting the wall and staring stupidly at the bug, at a complete loss. It looked back at him silently. After quite a while, Ding Fan finally grabbed the pillowcase and struck at it from the bed. The bug did not panic. It spread its countless legs, slowly crawled to the floor, and then slipped away through the crack under the door. Ding Fan was on the verge of collapse. He sat with his back against the wall, his hands and feet ice cold. Dawn came. Ding Fan slowly broke free from the shock, but the shadow of terror still covered his heart like a black sky. He kept thinking, why was it that every time one of these bugs appeared, Xiao Jia's photo would suddenly turn up out of nowhere, and why? When Xiao Jia in the photo drew closer, did the bug in reality also draw closer? He tried to comfort himself again. How could Xiao Jia possibly have anything to do with that weird bug? It was all just a coincidence. But one thing was beyond doubt. The bug was carrying out a malicious revenge. What exactly it wanted to do? Ding Fan did not know. In those invisible eyes of its lay an unfathomable plot. By this point, Ding Fan still could not tell whether the bug was the one he had flushed down the toilet and come crawling back, or merely one of its relatives. He shuddered in fear. He guessed that it must be trying to crawl into his ear and kill him. Faced with that kind of threat, he could not report it to the police, and he could not ask anyone for help. Most importantly, he had no way to defend himself. These bugs hid in the wild grass. He could not wipe them out. Just as human beings can never wipe out mice. On the endless nights ahead, they could crawl onto his bed at any time. He could not seal every crack in the room, and he could not stay awake forever. Suddenly, he regretted it. He regretted harming that bug in the first place. The author's story. I am the author, and I will tuck in one of my own stories here. When this novel had only just been written halfway, one evening a neighbor had an emergency and left their 3-year-old child in my care temporarily. It was a boy. He was very quiet and sat in front of the coffee table the whole time, bent over and drawing without making a peep. I was the only other person there watching television, some show about the exploration of the universe. Suddenly, the very obedient little boy looked up and said to me, "Look, a bug." That period, I was thinking every day about terrifying bug scenes. Whenever I thought of the eerie bugs I was writing about, I could not help shivering. Hearing him say that, I immediately lowered my head and asked worrily, "What bug?" The boy drew a long horizontal line on the white paper, then drew dense vertical strokes underneath it. He explained, "This is the bug. The bottom part is its legs. It has lots and lots of legs." A bug? Lots and lots of legs? Something about this felt strange. Then the boy drew dense vertical strokes above that horizontal line as well. He went on, "It has legs on its back too." My heart lurched. Then the boy began scribbling all over the bug in a completely random pattern until the bug had become a tangled mess. His expression was extremely serious. As he drew, he kept babbling. "It has legs on the palms of its hands too, and on its forehead too, and in its eyes too, and in its ears too, and in its belly too, and in its brain too." At that point, he gave a strange, gleeful laugh. I, a man who called himself a horror writer, was actually frightened to the bone. What scared me even more was, why was he drawing a bug? Why was it such a coincidence? There was another evening when I was walking outside the complex. By then, my story, The Bug, was nearing its end. On a grassy slope, I saw many strangely shaped plants, covered in thorns and hard to get close to. At their tips was something like a big flower bud, as large as a fist, but wrapped in 3 layers of green leaves, then 3 more layers, and so on. There was no way to tell whether it was a plant with hidden flowers or visible flowers. Curious, I stopped, snapped off one stem, and played with it in my hand. As I walked, I peeled away the green leaves wrapped around it, one layer after another. When I reached the last layer, I was stunned. Inside the core of that thing was actually a bug. It had been hiding so deeply. It looked at me silently, motionless. Alarmed, I threw it hard to the ground. That bug looked exactly like the bug described in my novel. You might think I had seen this kind of bug before and only then got the inspiration. No. You might also suspect that I made up this episode to make the story even scarier. Also no, if I'm lying to you, may I not be human. After that, the weather turned cold. I often found that some insects could not bear the cold and would crawl into my warm home, clinging motionless to the ceiling or the window frame. One late night while I was writing this very story, I actually saw a bug slowly crawling from behind the computer onto the monitor. It was the same kind I had seen not long before. Backbone. Continue writing. From then on, every time before Ding Fan went to sleep, he stuffed his ear holes tightly with cotton balls. After some more time, Xiao Jia's photos no longer appeared and the bugs no longer appeared either. Ding Fan finally let out a breath. During that period, Ding Fan had to turn in his article, but he had not found a suitable house to interview. Suddenly he thought of the painter friend and called her to ask whether she had any leads. She thought for a long time and could not come up with any. Then she suddenly asked, "Have you seen Xiao Jia's house?" "No, his house is too unusual. Why don't you go interview it? Where is it?" "Out in the back of Beyond." "Where is the back of Beyond?" "Way out in the far suburbs. It takes more than an hour to drive there." He bought a piece of land near a village and built a house there. It's very special. I've been there. At dusk, Ding Fan got in touch with Xiao Jia. After hearing Ding Fan out, Xiao Jia said lightly, "Come over." By the time Ding Fan took a taxi to the village, it was already dark. The house stood all by itself out in the wild, 3 li from the village. It had high walls and a high threshold, heavy doors and heavy locks, and several fierce wolf dogs on guard. All around it was wild grass, untouched and untended, giving the place a desolate look. Only Xiao Jia lived in that house. The first feeling Ding Fan had after stepping inside was cold. The place was tall, more like a temple hall. There was not the slightest warm color anywhere. The ceiling, the walls, the floor, all of them were a dim blue-green, and there were no hanging lights up high. All the lamps were low down, shining upward. "Look around, feel free," Xiao Jia said. Then he sat on the sofa to one side and watched Ding Fan quietly. Ding Fan suddenly felt that expression of his was familiar again. He was sick. He cursed himself. There were many doors in the house, most of them open. Ding Fan looked into each room one by one. He did not see a bedroom, a kitchen, a study, or even a bathroom. Those rooms all seemed to be photography studios filled with strange equipment. One door was shut tightly. Ding Fan walked up to it and looked back. Xiao Jia was staring at him fixedly. Afraid of that look, he forced a smile and asked, "What room is this?" "Don't touch that door," Xiao Jia said. Ding Fan felt cold all over. "Sorry, if it's inconvenient, I won't look." Xiao Jia suddenly gave a strange little laugh. "Actually, it's nothing much." Ding Fan looked at him. Xiao Jia paused, then went on, "It's all my photographic work in there." Ding Fan said, "I've never had a chance to admire your masterpieces. I ought to take a look. Besides, if we publish your house this time, we'll definitely need a little introduction to you. And it'd be best to include a few of your photographs." Xiao Jia walked over slowly, took out a key from his pocket slowly, and slowly inserted it into the keyhole. He said slowly, "If you want to look, go ahead. But don't be scared." Outside the window, there was only boundless darkness, silent and heavy. The moment Xiao Jia opened the door, Ding Fan's fear suddenly surged, and his heart began to pound wildly. The door opened. Ding Fan noticed it was a special door, more than half a foot thick. If it was shut, you could skin a man alive inside and no one outside would hear a thing. In that room, a dim pale green lamp was lit. Ding Fan looked inside and shuddered hard. It was a long, narrow room, more like a corridor. The walls on both sides, the ceiling, and the floor were all covered with photographs. Every single one of those photographs was of Xiao Jia. When Ding Fan was a child, he had once heard this saying at midnight: "If you look at more than 10,000 photographs of strangers, you will definitely go insane." And now, on this dark night, in this eerie room, Ding Fan saw untold photographs of the same man. He felt that he was truly about to break apart. There were too many photographs to count, and not one was repeated. Only Xiao Jia's expression was always the same, staring straight at the camera. Ding Fan clutched the doorframe, took a deep breath, and tried to say calmly, "You took this many photos?" Xiao Jia stood to the side, looked at him and said quietly, "My work is all photographs of myself." "How many are there?" 10,000. Ding Fan hardened himself and took a few steps inside. He felt as if he had fallen into a nightmare. He squeezed his eyes shut and backed out. He went straight to the sofa and sat down. Xiao Jia followed and sat down too. He sat in the shadows, staring at Ding Fan, his expression exactly the same as in the photos. Ding Fan's stomach was twisting. He tried to think of something to say, but his mind was completely blank. After sitting there for a while, he said stiffly, I have to go." "You can't go," Xiao Jia said, even stiffer than before. His eyes flashed with a sinister glint in the dark. "Why?" Ding Fan shivered. Xiao Jia smiled. "It's too late. Out here in the middle of nowhere, there isn't a car." Only then did Ding Fan realize how serious the problem was. "Stay here tonight. You can leave first thing tomorrow morning." Ding Fan's brain raced, but in the end he could not come up with any way out. Xiao Jia stood up slowly, took bedding down from a hanging cabinet, and said, "You can sleep in the main room." "Then what about you?" Ding Fan asked. Xiao Jia said, "You don't need to worry about me." Then he yawned and slowly walked toward the room covered in photographs. Ding Fan kept staring at his back. As Xiao Jia turned to close the door, he said, "I'm sleeping in this room. I sleep very deeply. If anything comes up, just bang on the door." Ding Fan smiled ingratiatingly. After Xiao Jia shut the door, Ding Fan spread out the bedding, lay down, turned off the light, and still could not sleep no matter what he did. Outside, the wind had picked up, howling like a woman in grief. Ding Fan felt more and more that this small, thin photographer was suspicious. At that moment, he suddenly remembered the painter friend who had introduced him to Xiao Jia. In this overwhelming fear, he wanted to call her and perhaps pry something out of her. He quietly took out his phone and called his friend's number. She answered in surprise. "Why are you calling at this hour?" "I was asleep." In the dark, Ding Fan lowered his voice and asked, "Tell me, how did you meet Xiao Jia? What is this about? Don't ask questions, tell me now." She thought for a moment and said, "We met by chance." Ding Fan held his breath and listened. "One evening I was walking home alone. My scarf got blown away by the wind, so I chased after it. At that moment, someone was sitting in the grass watching the sunset. The scarf landed right beside him, and he helped me pick it up. Later I learned that he was a photographer with the surname Jia. Again with the grass. Ding Fan felt as if his heart had plunged into a bottomless abyss. At that moment he heard a faint movement from the room covered in photographs, and he said, "All right, I know, that's enough." Before the painter friend could say another word, he hung up. He pulled the blanket over his head. The sound vanished again. All of Ding Fan's attention was fixed on that door. The wind grew stronger and stronger, and the whole world seemed to be in turmoil. He did not know when he had fallen asleep. In his dream, the bug crawled into this house and slowly made its way toward his bedding. Terrified, he leaped up and tried to run out of the house. Then he suddenly remembered that Xiao Jia was still inside and shouted to him, "Xiao Jia, run!" From the room covered with photographs came Xiao Jia's lazy voice. "What's wrong? It's too late. Come out now." Only after a long pause did Xiao Jia's voice come again. "All right." The bug advanced toward Ding Fan like a shadow. He retreated step by step, dodging it while waiting for Xiao Jia to come out. But after a very long time, Xiao Jia still had not moved. Ding Fan was burning with anxiety. "Xiao Jia, what are you doing?" Xiao Jia's voice came slowly from inside. "I haven't finished putting on my shoes yet." Ding Fan was a little furious. He strode toward the room covered with photographs, kicked the door open, and saw Xiao Jia facing inward, hunched over, indeed still putting on his shoes. Ding Fan patted him on the back and said, "Do you still want to live?" Xiao Jia turned around with maddening slowness. Ding Fan was terrified out of his wits. All in front of him were dense, countless legs. His face was gone, his belly was gone, his arms and legs were gone. The whole person looked like a brush. Those legs moved slowly, slowly. Ding Fan was shaken to the core and woke up at once, drenched in cold sweat. His eyes were fixed on Xiao Jia's door. In the dim night, that door looked like a face. He felt more and more that the house was not right. It seemed there was more than one living thing in the main hall. He suddenly remembered that the day he received the photographer's first photo, a bug had crawled in that very night. A few days later, he received another of the photographer's photos, and that night another bug crawled in. And today, he had seen countless photos of that photographer. He shivered and reached out to turn on the light. He stared in disbelief. The dark blue-green house was crawling with those grass-green bugs. On his quilt, on his mattress, on his pillow, bugs everywhere. The dense legs were all moving slowly. Suddenly he felt that one furry bug had quickly drilled into his ear. Panicked beyond measure, he reached up and tried to dig it out, but it was too late. He felt those grass-green bugs crawling all over his hair, his neck, his shoulders. Then a violent pain struck inside his head. He collapsed to the floor at once, rolling and screaming. The bugs one after another drilled into his ear holes. They were not burrowing toward the soft places. They were gnawing on the hard bone, as if erasing pencil marks with a rubber eraser. Wherever they passed, the bone turned to powder. The more they ate, the faster they moved inside Ding Fan's body. Ding Fan shot up like a fish in boiling oil, howling as he ran madly around the room, his head slamming over and over into the hard wall. At last he lay down. Everything inside his body had been smashed to pieces, yet he was still breathing. He twitched on the floor, rolling weakly like a bug, curling forward 360 degrees, then curling backward 360 degrees. Countless grass-green bugs slowly crawled over again and again, drilling into his mouth, nostrils, eyes. The bugs gathered thicker and thicker, blanketing the floor in a tight mass, and some even crawled onto others of their kind. At that moment he seemed to finally see their faces clearly. They were laughing. Their laughter was astonishingly human. In fact, the two stories above are unrelated, but once they intersect, they weave together into a dark and sinister tale. After that, to call them unrelated anymore, I doubt even a university professor would believe it. So much horror is born this way. Those days, there was a big sale on insecticide at the supermarket near Ding Fan's office. Each can cost only 1 yuan and 50 fen.